lock in, network, stay 10 toes down, let's surf. I have a special guest with me today. Every episode is a special guest. But please join me in welcoming my former college instructor, Dr. Dorian Brown.
Not doctor yet.
Not doctor yet.
I'll get there.
I'll get there. Okay.
I can't take that credit yet.
Dorian Brown. Man, I'm glad that we got to see this through. I know I manifested this like a year and a half ago, so I'm glad you agreed to do this.
Well, thank you for remembering me. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Again, like I said, I pride myself on coming up with some good prompts and questions during the interview. So I'm going to be just firing some things your way. But until then, I kind of wanted to start just with your journey, your upbringing, and your connection to your calling, which I know that you're a hip hop head, as I would describe you.
Definitely, for sure.
All right, so yeah, let's get after it.
It's interesting telling this story now at 52 because there's a whole lot, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. I was my journey began in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's where I was born. I started elementary school there. Born when my mother was still in high school. Grew up around, my grandmother. I call my grandmother Mama.
Yeah.
And had an interesting. My father's side of the family is also that's some interesting stuff to get into too. Talking about my dad's side of the family, but all of that shaped me. I tell people all the time. So my mother's a dancer. She specialized in African dance, but she also did modern, jazz, ballet, that kind of thing. She's a choreographer.
Did that rub off on you?
Yes. Actually, it did. Yes. And the other side of my family, all of the women on my father's side of the family were all beauticians, and they all worked in the same shop. So I spent my life, I tell people all the time, I spent my life in dance studios and a hair salon. And then as a little bitty kid in the bar next door to the hair salon, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, where it began. We moved to East St. Louis, which is where I grew up. So when I talk about home, it's East St. Louis, Illinois. We moved there. We moved to St. Louis first when I was about 10. And then we moved over to East St. Louis, and that's where I grew up. That's kind of those formative years. That's where I got educated, so to speak.
What's your football team? Your
NFL football team. I'm a Bengals fan. I'm a diehard Bengals fan. My father was a season ticket holder till the day that he passed.
So you must have been up in the air when they spanked the Niners. Back in, was that October?
Yes, but the Niners have always beaten us in the Super Bowls.
Yeah, I know, 55-10 back in '91.
No, that was Denver. They beat 50. No, I can tell you actually, y'all. We played San Francisco in 1982 because I was 10 years old. It was right after my 10th birthday, January 26th. Played them in the Silver Dome. The 49ers beat us 20-16. And then we played them again in '89 when Boomer Esiason was the quarterback, and we lost. No. The first Super Bowl, '82, we lost 26-21. Second Super Bowl, we lost 20-16.
Close games.
Yeah, always close games. Yeah. Dude dropped the interception right before he caught the slant in the touchdown. I can tell you, I remember that. And then recently we went to the Super Bowl. When we played the Rams down there in L.A. I went down there for that.
And that was the year that we lost to the Rams in the NFC Championship.
Yeah. And so, so I'm a diehard Bengals fan, diehard Reds fan, Cincinnati Reds, and the Cardinals, because I grew up, again in St. Louis, so in East St. Louis, so the Cardinals are, the thing. So, but my football teams are kind of eclectic too, like because my mom lived in Kansas City for 20 years, and I used to go to Kansas City a lot. Became a Chiefs fan because I used to go to. My mother lived like this far from the stadium, and I used to go to the guys to take my uncle to the game. So I'm a Chiefs fan too.
Yeah, I was gonna say St. Louis, Missouri.
And then the Rams left.
Okay.
I was a season ticket holder for the Rams, and they left.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm hot, so I hate staying cranky. I literally went over to my uncle's house. We went down to the Super Bowl. I drove over to SoFi Stadium just so I could spit. Because of the way that he left St. Louis and what he did to St. Louis, we're all still mad about the way the Rams left St. Louis. So I'm
what was that? How did they leave St. Louis?
Well, it was one of those things where they were offering him money to, he was saying they needed a new venue because the Edward Jones Dome had gotten old. So they were offering money to say, hey, well, if we give you $400 million, will you? No. Well, we got $700 million. How much can you contribute? Oh, well, I don't have any money to contribute. And then he leaves, and then all of a sudden he builds a $1.2 billion stadium.
Wow. Was that like what percent of the economy did that team bring in St. Louis?
Woo. Downtown in that particular area where it was a lot, because you have the people that work for the venues. You had the parking structure that was down there. I forgot the name of the company, Central Parking.
Yeah.
That was down there, that kind of thing. So it took a lot of revenue away. But the thing about it though is that the reason it hurt St. Louis so much was because the Cardinals had left. The Arizona Cardinals were the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they left, and then we get another team, and y'all leave too. Yeah. It's like, so yeah, we were, yeah. As you can see, I'm a big sports fan.
Yeah, I know.
We can talk football, basketball.
Yeah, we probably
I started watching hockey.
Did you now?
Yeah.
Recently or?
Recently.
Okay.
It was because, and I say recently within the last 5 years, a little bit more intently, within the last year or so, because my friends and I do a podcast about sports. We decided.
How long y'all did the conversation have anything to do with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, big time. It's something we had talked about, and then when you talk. Well, my thing with you and talking about the podcast, me and my friends had talked about doing it before, but in talking with you, what I realized was you inspired me because you said you wanted to do it, and then you went out and did it. We had just been talking about it and been talking about it for a while and hadn't done anything. But when you did that, when you came up and you talked to me about it, and we had the conversation, and then you were like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then you went and did it. I was like, okay, I have to go do this as well, because and it's not the idea of, oh, well, if he can do it, I can do it. But it was really the idea of that, you were willing to put yourself out there to do a platform like this. And it was like, it really inspired me. And I said, okay, well, I got to do the same. And so that's what we did.
Yeah, I think it's also so easy, too, to get it done. Like, some of my favorite podcasters, like, the presentation is not like as big as this.
Right.
Like this podcast is very intentional, and I'm trying to do something with it. But I actually want to start another podcast.
Right.
Like, I want to start a Law and Order SVU podcast and just nerd out on those episodes. Me and my brother used to watch Law and Order SVU. He put me on when I was 13, and me and my wife are now watching it. We just started season 3, and I'm like, man, watching this as an adult, it's like, what? This is crazy. But like, you take Shannon Sharp.
Yeah.
He got Club Shay Shay. Yeah. Where he'll have celebrities on. And that presentation he's in a nice studio, nice couches, but then he also has the nightcap with Terrell Owens, where, he's pushed into the camera, they both got their headphones on. And
you mean Ocho Cinco? That's
what I meant, Ocho Cinco, yep.
He's bingo.
He is, yeah, I know. And they kind of just talking shit, you know what I'm saying? And I like that. You got, there's a space for everything. Yeah. And I think just nerding out with your friends is kind of, it's the right way to do it.
And that's what we do, because we talk, we sit and text all the time. And it was like, man, we should do a podcast. That way, well, because what it also did was, and these are, my cousins, and my friends, we all this. The guys I grew up with in East St. Louis, which is why we call our podcast Blame It on the Boogie, because it's East Boogie, right? So we talk about, that's all we did when we were younger. We grew up playing a lot basketball all the time. Basketball was our link to one another, but we also liked other sports. But we sit up and talk about it. So it's like, man, it gives us the opportunity to see one another, because we're all in different places. My one friend is in Detroit. My other friend, my cousin, he's back at home. I'm out here. So it gives us that opportunity to really get together and see one another and that kind of thing as well. So it was, kind of therapeutic for us as well.
It's a beautiful thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So going back to your upbringing, you were... I mean, it's clear that you had a lot of female influence around you.
Yes.
How has that shaped you? Did you have? Do you feel like you had enough male influence around you?
Yes, I had that too. I think one of the ways in which it shaped me, and then it actually, even changed even more when I got married, is I always felt like I had a very healthy respect for women. The idea of a strong black woman, or a strong woman in general, but I grew up around black women. So the idea of a strong black woman wasn't intimidating. It's not intimidating to me because that's what I always grew up around. My grandmother, took care of, my aunts and uncles, and my mother, by herself. Matter of fact, she took care of all of us, working at the post office. And so, she was, being the matriarch of the family, even on my father's side, my Auntie Lane, we call her Aunt Lane. My Aunt Lane was the matriarch and the strong black woman on that side of the family. My mother, my dad will tell you in a minute how, he looked up one day and my mother hit him with a 2-piece, and my mother's about 4'11", so it gave me a very healthy respect for women. And again, the idea of a strong black woman or a woman with an opinion does not intimidate me in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I like it. I love it. And so what was it like in high school? Like, because you there's a lot of, you're a multifaceted individual. Mm-hmm. And I know you were big into hip hop. Mm-hmm. I know you were academically sound. Mm-hmm. What was high school like coming up for you, and how did you find your place? Man,
so there is a book about, the first chapter is about the high school that I went to. It's called, by Jonathan Kozol, Kozol.
I think
it's called Savage Inequalities.
Does Kozol have another name? He goes by the name?
Not that
you
I
wrote
know.
That name down on the board in class one time.
Yeah,
okay.
Jonathan Kozol wrote Savage Inequalities. Because our high school was the first chapter, and then I think he did Baltimore. He did a bunch of other places. So it's interesting talking about East St. Louis, right? Because if you Google East St. Louis, it gives you all these tales of poverty and despair and 99% black, one of the highest murder rates in the country from a city of 40, 50,000, this kind of thing. But you want to talk about people from where I'm from, Miles Davis, LaFonso Ellis, Dana Howard, College Football Hall of Famer, LaFonso Ellis, Homer Bush, Brian Cox, Conzo Martin, who coached, University of California basketball team. He's Darius Miles, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, Al Joyner, her brother. What is her name? Dawn Harper, the silver medalist. They're all from where I'm from. Yeah. We got PhDs from where I'm from. I hope to be one of them soon. But I know a number of people who have PhDs from where I'm from. So it's really interesting, that kind of community that we had people who saw, my counselor, Miss Williams, who saw in a lot of us and made sure that we got to the correct teachers. So, those of us that graduated, in the top 10 and so on and so forth, many of us, in East St. Louis, went to college. Graduated from college, and went on to be very successful. But at the same time, we're still from this place that we understand, needs help, right? But that love that we have, for East St. Louis, is because of how we grew up and where we grew up. Again, it's a small knit community, because again, it's only maybe at its height at one point there was 82,000. And then the white flight happened in 1950s, 1960s.
Changed the economy?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
All of the jobs moved out, right? And it always left the people who had no wherewithal, then it left them without jobs and so on and so forth. So by the time you get to the late 1960s, early 1970s, East St. Louis is all black.
Yeah. It sounds like Flint, Michigan, story of Flint. It sounds like the story of Ferguson with Mike Brown. I listened to Mark Lamont Hill he talked about those issues contributing to the violence in the community.
Yeah, it's a lot of things when you get into poverty, when you get into lack of education, it causes an apathy, a disdain for education. It causes a hopelessness. Because when I say a disdain for education, because the idea becomes, well, how is me learning this calculus? How is this going to help me when I'm going home hungry? Yeah. What is history going to do for me when my lights aren't on? Yeah. It's that kind of thing. And so when you have that kind of hopelessness, then you turn to the things that give you hope, that give you that quick hope, right? I know people, know a lot of people that did that or whatever. For me, I knew to get to where I wanted to get, it was going to take me some time to get there. I understood. I saw, people go for the fast money, and I saw what it did to them, and, the effects of that kind of thing. That just wasn't me. I'm a scaredy cat. When I was young, that was when the movie Penitentiary came out. I saw that movie. I said, nah, I'm not trying to go to the penitentiary.
That's not the one where he was like,
with Leon Kennedy.
You love me now at the end? No, that's a different movie. That's Lockdown.
I'm talking about, I'm talking about the old school. Okay. It was Penitentiary 1 and Penitentiary 2 with Leon Isaac Kennedy. And I saw them kind of movies. I was like, I can't be going to jail. Yeah.
It sounds like you found your love for hip hop in high school.
No,
way before that.
Way before that.
Just you come from a family that had records and
yes. My older uncles, my uncle Clarence, my uncle Maurice, my uncle Lamont, may he rest in peace. Their cousin is Gerald Brown, who was one of the original members of Shalimar. My uncle Maurice had a band they were called Pure Pressure. Cincinnati, a lot of bands come out of Cincinnati. The Isley Brothers, and come out of Cincinnati. Matter of fact, my stepmother's, say they're sisters, but her best friend, my Aunt Donna, her brother is Darnell Bristol from The Deal, where Babyface and L.A. Reid started. Wow. My mother actually so L.A. Reid has an older sister named Rosalind. That's my mother's friend. My mother used to take him trick-or-treating when he was a kid in Cincinnati. My grandmother's cousin is L.D. Young. He was one of the original members of the Ramsey Lewis Trio.
A lot of
connection. And then my mother's a dancer. So I grew up around music a lot. And, even my aunt, who wasn't a musician or anything, she had a lot of records and so on and so forth. My grandmother listened to a lot of music. Even on my father's side, as a matter of fact, I can't leave out my grandfather played the clarinet, the saxophone. He played out in Harlem in New York Cotton Club. I have pictures. I think I showed those in class. I have pictures of my grandfather with Billie Holiday and with Joe Louis out in Harlem playing at the Cotton Club. And so yeah. And my grandmother on that side was a dancer too as well in the clubs. So music has always been a big part of me. And so I can tell you to the day the first time I heard Rapper's Delight. I still remember that day. I can tell you exactly what was happening that morning. I can tell you what was on the radio. I can tell you what station I was listening to. I was 7 years old.
Is that considered the first hip-hop song?
It's considered the first commercial hip-hop song when hip-hop was on the radio. Because, it's the 50th, right? So, they're going back to 73, right? When, Kool Herc and, when the idea, the concept of hip-hop began.
And that wasn't a diss track, was it?
Which one?
Rapper's Delight. That was
no, not at all. No. Actually, what it was Grandmaster Caz from the Cold Crush Brothers. Big Bank Hank asked him if he could borrow his rhyme book, and so that's why the song says, even though it's Big Bank Hank, if you listen to the verse, he says, "I'm the CASA, the NOVA, and the rest is FLY, Casanova Fly." That's Grandmaster Caz.
And then you were in college around the golden age of hip hop, which is like 89 to 93. Yeah. That must have been crazy for you.
Yes. Even if you started the golden age, maybe earlier, probably 88, right? Okay. But I remember that was when my senior year, senior year high school, and then getting to school, getting to U of I was introduced to that, not only more hip hop, but that's when hip hop started getting into jazz with Tribe Called Quest and that kind of thing. So you started seeing a real major expansion of hip hop, of conceptual hip hop. It wasn't just the 808s and drum kicks, and they started really getting into jazz and so on and so forth. But man, I used to try to rhyme. I got some good friends. Shout out to Prime Meridian, my guys Tree and Simeon, who had a group, and they ended up traveling the world, going to France and stuff and performing. Eventually now my guy Tree is a principal. He's a middle school principal in Champaign, Illinois, where we went to college. So it's interesting, how that turned out. But
I was going to ask you, like, you got stuff written. You had to have dipped your toe into it a little bit.
Yeah, I used to write. I used to write a lot. All the time.
Would you describe your style as more conscious, or?
I would say. Well, I would say evolved a bit, and I would say that what happened is that I stopped writing to rhyme and started writing poems.
Yeah.
And so that was probably around maybe 94, 95, 96, right? And so my poetry was definitely conscious. I wrote a lot of conscious poetry. But rhyming, because, we started, me and my cousins, we started rhyming in like the back room. My cousin Calvin would be the beatbox. And me and my cousin Deuce, the one I'm on the podcast with, we would be, sitting back there rhyming at my Aunt Maymay's house. Yeah. So we were 12, 13. So, we were just trying to be braggadocious like they were. So I would probably say it was really more of that, just talking about how good I thought I was as an MC, how I could make you think with the things that I was saying, that kind of thing. I don't really think I got real conceptual probably until I got better educated. I think that was something, because we started, I think what hip-hop did for us, well, I'm not going to speak for everybody, I'm going to say for me. I remember I got the chance to meet KRS-One.
What year is this?
Had to be 90, maybe 97, 98. He came to, because I went to grad school at Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville, and he came and did a lecture. It wasn't even like a show. He came and did a lecture. And so he was signing T-shirts, and I bought a T-shirt, and he signed it for me. I still have it, too, as a matter of fact. But I told him, I said, man, I just want to let you know that why is that changed my life? And he looked at me. He said, but I was like, no, seriously. It was, hip-hop started making us read, because we wanted to know what they were talking about. We started reading the things that they were talking about in their songs. He made, KRS-One made me take a closer look at the Bible.
I was going to ask you about that next.
Yeah.
Keep going.
No.
Yeah,
but yeah, he made me start taking a closer look at the Bible as someone who had the woman who was the dancer at the Cotton Club. By the time I knew her, she was at church every Sunday. So my great grandmother, I remember she gave me a Bible for as a gift for Christmas, and I read it, right? But he gave me a new perspective on it, in terms of being black, because I was starting to come into that idea. I was starting to really study history, and get a bit, being trained as a historian. I was starting to understand that. So So he really, the MCs in general, even the Poor Righteous Teachers, Brand Nubian, Common, Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul. When you start listening to the things that they were saying, it was like, okay, he's talking about this book. Well, let me go get this book and let me read it. Let me go get this book.
What is the connection to? What's the biblical connection? I know you covered this in class one time, but I think we listened to a song by Tribe, and then we listened to a song by Brand Nubian.
We listened. We did Sunshine because I was talking about the 5%ers.
Yes, the 5%ers. Yes.
But KRS One in Why Is That? He starts it off. He in the song. He's he's basically saying, why is it that they teach us these things? Why do they teach it in this way? And then he says Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. Genesis 14 verse 13. Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. So,
is this the stuff that got Kyrie in trouble?
No, it was probably more. It's probably more the 5% stuff that got Kyrie in trouble.
Okay.
In terms of the video that he was trying to get people to watch and so on and so forth, which they labeled anti-Semitic and that kind of thing. Because of I forgot what the name of that video was, but as soon as I heard about it, I knew what exactly what they were referring to. And again, it made us start to read that, and we, but I think one of the things about being trained in a certain way, being educated in this way, as we were being, we, you learn, things like, quote unquote, you take a philosophy class, the Socratic method, questioning things, right? So we didn't necessarily just take it as gospel. Okay, this is what's the truth. It was like, okay, well, KRS-One says this. Well, let me go see where he got his information from. And let me go check that information. And let me go check that information.
And it all adds up.
Yeah, and then you start to see where the pieces start to fit.
Yeah.
Even when you find something that when you actually read it, you may see, okay, well, you may think that that's their interpretation is a misinterpretation. But at the same time, it made you go look and think about it. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with healthy debate. We can always agree to disagree.
I don't know about 2024 anymore. I don't know about today anymore. I feel like it's a agenda out there where if you disagree with me, you're a hater. You hate these people.
And they want to cancel you. And if you're on this side, and it's one of those things where can't both of these things be true? Why is it that it has to be one or the other?
Or like, just because I don't subscribe to this mindset, why does that make me a bad person? Because here's the thing with this, and I spent many years working with children and families in this city. I think one of the things it leads to is performative activism, performative justice. I'm going to say I rock with these people so I don't get canceled, so they don't come after me. But in my day-to-day life, I'm not doing nothing over there. I'm not subscribed to that mindset.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And me and my wife talk about starting a family. And I'm not hearing anything good about black fathers. And it's like, if I make a decision for my children, for my family, for my household, that make me a bad guy. And it's like, because I'm not going to waver on that. That's something that I'm not willing to roll the dice on.
Right.
You feel me? So where we're at today, it's like, you don't want to be the people you don't want to be the person or the group of people that folks are scared of.
Yes.
How can we build community? They think this way. Is it harmful? Is it like, there's just so many ways to go about it, and I think we're not going about it the right way. I think it's cool to be a victim these days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's really unsettling sometimes.
I think one of the things that has happened is that we have come to this point where there is no longer healthy debate.
Yeah.
Right? Almost to the point where if you don't agree with me, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Right? Where, I can't associate with you anymore. I think also one of the things that has happened is that everything also has become politicized. Yeah. And that is a big issue. There are a lot of things, and I say we in terms of American society, that have become politicized and or weaponized in many ways, right? And I think that's one of that's a major issue. And it really honestly boils down to being able to have these discussions and being able to have these difficult discussions, right? Yeah. And I hate to sound cliche. I hate to sound like everyone else. But it's really true. But I think that people on either side, whatever issue that we're talking about, people on either side of that particular issue have a problem with compromise. Yeah. And this idea of, okay, we're going to have to meet in the middle.
That's where I'm at with many different like social challenges. Mm-hmm. I think most things are pretty. I think most things are cut and dry. If it's wrong, we can all see that is wrong, yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. But there are some nuanced phenomena where I'm in the middle. I understand what they're going through, and I understand what y'all going through. And you would think that being somewhere in the middle, people are kind of like, okay, I'm cool with you, but I get more hate because now I'm beefing with both sides. You know what I'm saying? I'm working in schools where I was a part of an initiative to support African American students and families, and a big part of my job was transforming adult mindsets, putting interventions into place to help our students academically. Mm-hmm. But then I'm not gonna let my kids just run the hallway, right? And just Tarquin, let them just do it. You're too hard on them. Like, we're setting them up for failure because society don't work like that. Mm-hmm. You know, and a lot of these kids from the neighborhood, I'm at the corner store at midnight during the pandemic. They at the corner store at midnight during the pandemic. And I'm like, what's going on here? You know what I'm saying? And then you like, I think we're in a state of emergency with our youngsters in the city just crashing out and not choosing to invest in themselves. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm somewhere in the middle. Somebody told me that offering consequences that reflect the real world is harmful to them. And I will never be able to understand
that. It's the weirdest thing to really talk about the idea of the participation trophy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But once that kind of started happening, right? Then that was when you started to see people, particularly the younger generations, take things for granted.
Yes.
Right? They took for granted that they should, what's the word? I think they took the rewards for granted. It was okay, well, you tried hard. Because the idea of the participation trophy is to really reward you for your effort. Even though you didn't win,
I'm a big fan
you
of that.
Played very well.
Yes.
And here is something for you to be able to be proud of because of your effort. That's what the participation trophy was. But then what happened is then when everybody started getting the participation trophies, then people took for granted that they should be rewarded even for not putting forth any effort.
Exactly. And then you inflate
the
reward system. Now the top 5 performers are like, well, we all getting one. But the other thing is like, this is a great example. Somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. I'm a basketball coach. If I got a player who can't really hit shots, can't really stay in front of nobody, but they like every game, they're here, they're trying to make the right move, I'm gonna shout you out. I'm gonna reward you in a way that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of people stop showing up to practice, stop trying, stop being having a team mindset, and they expect the same sort of allowances and reward system. I'm like, that's not what it's about. And I'm sure you understand this as an educator. You know what I'm saying? Somebody on the fence with that grade. So you want to do the right thing. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. It's tough.
See, the thing for me, even as an educator, I do run into this a lot, and I don't think students realize how much, for me anyway, how much I really reward effort. I feel like it's like, all right, so I think getting back to sports and sports analogies, right? I remember watching, I think it was a documentary on, is it NFL Films? I think it might have been Mike Holmgren. Okay, because Mike Holmgren, studied under Bill Walsh.
Yeah. Right. I'm starting to understand all the studied under, because Mike Shanahan had Mike McDaniel and D'Amico Ryan, so I'm starting to understand.
And you see how they're similar too, right?
It's kind of like martial arts.
Yes. Yes.
I studied under this master.
Yes.
And then, you know what I'm saying?
Yes. So they all studied under Bill Walsh. West Coast offense is all Bill Walsh, right? And so he was talking about Joe Montana, and he said that Bill Walsh told Joe Montana, when you throw this pass, I want it to be 6 inches in front of so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. He said Bill Walsh, it wasn't, as far as he was concerned, wasn't 6 inches in front of him, so Bill Walsh went off. And Holmgren said he looked at Joe Montana and was like, look good to me. He said, but it wasn't until later till he really realized what Bill Walsh was doing. And that's kind of my teaching philosophy. I'm going to push you to strive for perfection. I know that you're not perfect. And I'm really not expecting you to be perfect. But I want you to put forth the effort about being perfect. That's what I'm looking at. So I look at progress. I don't necessarily just go by the grades or whatever. But at the same time, I also know that I'm a hard grader. When I grade a paper, I grade everything. I don't just grade content. I grade grammar. Because that's part of getting your point across, is having it written. If you're writing me something, I need to be able to understand what it is that you're writing. I need to understand the point that you're trying to get across. So I'm big on grammar. People think I'm nitpicky, but I remember that. And so, but then at the end, what will happen is that you'll take the techniques that I teach you in my class, and you'll be applying them in other people's classes as well. So they'll make you better all around.
Have you taught at the collegiate level higher than the JC level?
Yes.
Do you think that philosophy, that approach to teaching is more important at the JC level or at the four-year institution level? Because, just preparation. One of the things I think about is when Trayvon Martin passed, I think I was 20. When he was killed, I saw a lot of black elders, especially our female elders, talk to young men and say, hey, don't wear baggy clothes, keep that hood off, and kind of just teaching us to put things in place to keep us safe. We want to make it home that night.
Right.
And young men of other communities don't really need that messaging.
Right, I don't know.
Is that like something that you're thinking about at the JC level? I want you to be prepared for this four-year institution that you're going to transfer to.
Yes, for me, I am so at the JC level. I'm really preparing you. That's why I said you can take what I'm teaching you and apply it in other places as well. Because, like I said, I'm on the grammar. So when you get to the 4-year schools, and you have to take those upper level classes and so on and so forth, you remember how to cite sources. You remember, those kinds of things. It's to prepare you to get there. When I teach at the 4-year school, the thing is that it becomes that time where I'm finally dealing with history majors. See, at the JC level, I'm very rarely, I can probably count now, I'm 25 years into this, and I'm quite sure that I can count the number of history majors that I've run into, or people who wanted to be history majors at the JC level that I've run into on both hands. That's maybe not even both hands, right? But at the 4-year school level, I run into, when I teach a class, I'm really running into people who are going to be history majors. So then I'm preparing history scholars. So it's a little bit different.
The level of intentionality when kids know you want to be there for history.
Yeah. When I know you want to be there for history, well, now we're going to really start kind of delving into the history. We're going to talk about kind of these different I understand at the undergraduate level we may not get into that, but I'm really about the idea of application. How is this historical concept, what you're seeing here, what you're reading here, how is this being applied during this particular time period? How was Du Bois' philosophy being applied? How was Washington's philosophy being applied? And not only that, but what can you take from their philosophies and be able to use now? I'm not saying that you have to do everything that Washington said or everything that Du Bois said, but what they were doing has merit because they're dealing with the same shit we were dealing with now. You know, so that's when I really start getting into the applications and of the history and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's definitely a different level of teaching.
I wanted to ask you. You performed well in high school. You went to college. Did your
didn't necessarily perform well early.
You said what?
Said I didn't necessarily perform well early.
Oh. Well, I mean, hey, you here, so you can just
but college is when you really find. I think a lot of young people believe you have to have everything figured out when you get to college. That that once you get there and choose a major, you have to stick with that, or you have to know what your major is when you get there. And I can tell you that you do not. Yeah. And you never really figure out. I won't say never, but you don't figure out what it is that you really like. Probably until almost after you graduate. I can tell you there's a lot of people I know that got degrees and now that they could go back and do it again would major in something different because they realize that their interests are different.
100%. I'm 32, and I think one of the reasons why I'm okay with where I'm at in my college journey, transferred to SF State, undergrad, is because I think around 28 to 33, 34, for a lot of guys that I know around that age group, it's like it's like the aftermarket. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of guys I know coach high school sports and work with young people, but they were scientists at Genentech. Mm-hmm. They were chemistry majors. Mm-hmm. I have friends who are accountants, and then 31 years old, they like I'm moving to SoCal to go work on cars. Mm-hmm. And this is like around that age where it's, hey, I did it. I dipped my toe into the corporate world. I don't really like it. I'm going to go chase my passion.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of doing the same thing right here, but I'm also okay with where I'm at being 30 and having a group project with a couple 19-year-olds who's slacking off. You know what I'm saying? So like, I'm okay with that. It's all a part of the journey.
Right.
But one of the things I wanted to ask you was, what was it like being in academic spaces, but still being this hip hop head, still like dressing a certain way, talking a certain way, and performing academically? Because no one can take your education away from you.
It was. I didn't. From a couple of different standpoints. I think that being young in undergrad, and even high school, but really undergrad for the most part. Grad school might have been a little bit different, but I think people assumed things about you because you liked hip hop, right? I think that now what has happened again is that people take hip hop for granted in terms of like it's always been here, and people have, hip hop has always been this global phenomenon making billions of dollars and so on and so forth. I can tell people I distinctly remember when the radio station, this was when I was in high school, the local radio station, Magic 108, their motto at that time was they literally would say on the radio, we're music all day and no rap, right? And it was a double entendre, meaning that they didn't do commercials and they didn't do a lot of talking, but it also meant that they weren't playing rap music. Yeah. So we didn't hear that kind of stuff on the radio. So people assumed if you listen to rap music that, and this is even among our peer group, that there were people who, I don't listen to hip hop. I don't like hip hop. It's too violent. It talks too much about sex. It does this. And so I find myself, it degrades women. So I found myself defending, and all of us, defending hip hop in many ways. And people assuming that because we listen to hip hop, then we subscribe to those things. We believe in those things and that kind of thing. Academically, what I'll say is that it's only been recently, maybe the last, 20 years, that people started to believe in hip hop academically. When I first went into, again, this goes back to what we're talking about, right? because I started grad school as a math major.
Wow.
Right? And so when I decided math wasn't my thing, and I wanted to go back to history, initially what I was going to do was get a master's degree in history and go to law school, right? And I go to talk to Dr. Nordhauser, real nice man. Still to this day, whenever I see him at SIUE, I speak, he still remembers me. Real nice man, Dr. Nordhauser. He was the chair of the history department at that time. And I went in there to talk to him about changing my major and getting into grad school, in history. And he says, well, what do you want to study? And I said, well, I want to study, hip hop culture. I see it as, the continuum, this next step in the African American musical tradition, which, deals with, tells about the black experience, the urban black experience. I tell him this. And he looked at me and he literally says, I just don't see how that's history. Right? Now,
what school was this?
It's Southern Illinois University, Evansville. Okay. Now, how I ended up getting into grad school was he had this book on his desk called Of Rice and Slaves, written by Daniel Littlefield. Well, I happened to have Littlefield's class at U of I. So I'm walking out the office. I put my backpack on because I'm like, man, now I got to go figure out how I'm going to get through grad school in math. Yeah. Right? And I walk out and I said, oh, Of Rice and Slaves. And he said, you've read this? I said, I had Littlefield's class. And he said, really? So I sat down and started talking, and then before I left, I was a history major.
Wow.
But hip-hop, he wasn't trying to hear that. But Dr. Chajua, Sundiata Keita Chajua, Sundiata K. Chajua, who's now at University of Illinois, believed in what it was that I wanted to do as far as hip-hop was concerned, and mentored me. And so that's how I kind of, found that niche. And then my former office mate saw it too. So
sometimes that's all it takes is one good person, one believer, get it done. Yeah. How did you end up in Cali?
My wife came out here first. My wife came out here for a job at USF. She was the assistant director of enrollment management, I think, or graduate enrollment management at the Graduate Business School right downtown. And
during the pandemic?
No, right before. It's literally right before, and that's how I ended up out here. So my wife came in August of 2019.
Y'all was already married
previously. Yes. We got married in 2016.
Okay.
So she was offered this job in August of 2019, and what I was going to do was I was going to stay, and then I was going to finish up my PhD, and then when I got done, I would start looking for a job out here. And I came out to visit a couple of times. So it was and I would always, of course, come, like Christmas break, I stayed for the whole month or whatever, that kind of stuff, right? And what happened is I came to visit for spring break. And I'll never forget this. I got here on March the 12th.
Yeah. Started on the 16th. That's a Thursday. I was in San Diego.
Yep.
And they were telling me, hey, the government shutdown is happening on Monday. So get it in. That's crazy.
Yeah, and so I got out here, and everything went online. They were canceling flights and all this kind of stuff. Everything went online, and so basically I got out here and I never went back. I got the job at CCSF.
And you're the department chair.
Department chair of African American Studies.
How's that? Do you like that? It's a good gig.
I enjoy teaching. I'm the administrative stuff,
supervising adults.
Yeah, and in a way, I really try not to supervise. I don't want it because
sure, everybody got their style.
Yeah,
sure.
It's one of those kinds of things. But I try to be do everything collaboratively and so on and so forth because I hate that idea of being a supervisor. But there's just really a lot of politics that goes into it. Office politics. Academic politics are kind of the same, where we see politics with people, let's be honest, kissing up to the president and so on and so forth. You see the same thing at the academic level with people kissing up to the assistant vice president or to the provost or to the, that kind of thing. And that's just not me. So when you become kind of a low-level administrator, so to speak, being a department chair, well, then it becomes political for funding. When you're trying to get funding for certain things. And,
people trying to pull you this way.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely.
Kind of sucks the fun out of it, right? Sometimes?
Yes. A lot of time. Oh, a lot of the
Wow.
times. A lot of times. And again, that's just not me. I'm not one of those political type of people. Because again, as we were saying earlier, there are a lot of things where I can see both sides. Right? Yeah. But you know, people want to draw you or force you to come to one side or to the other. And like you said, that really takes all the fun out of it. Because what I enjoy is coming in and teaching. I really do enjoy coming in every day and talking about the material, teaching the material. I hope people see that I have an enthusiasm for it. But I really do. That's what I enjoy. The administrative stuff, I'm like, I wish I didn't have to grade.
Yeah. You had to stop your PhD program when the pandemic started.
Yes, a little bit. Because none of the research institutions were open, right? You couldn't go to the library. In St. Louis, as a matter of fact, what the St. Louis Public Library did was, and a lot of my research is primary source research, you know, so I'm looking at newspapers and I'm doing interviews. Well, you couldn't be around people, you know, to do interviews. To get into the newspaper room at the public library, you could only come once a day for an hour. Anybody that has ever tried to do any research will tell you that by the time you pull all the books out your bag and you get everything set up,
got 10 minutes left.
A half an hour, right? And it's like, what am I here for? So that really curtailed a whole lot or whatever. So I've been able to really get back into it. I'll be done this August. I have to be. But I'll definitely be done because they only give you so much time. You can't just take forever, you know, to get a PhD. Plus, I'm going into too much debt. So I'm like, man, there's no way I'm going to be in as much debt as I'm going to be in and not have that piece of paper to show for it. Yeah. So, but now I'm been getting it done. One of my best friends, his wife has been on me all the time. You know, I got to give a shout out to Net for bothering me all the time, and I know she likes bothering me too. I know she enjoys being able to text me and bother me. She knows that. But yeah, she's been on me about that. So yeah, so it'll get done. Yeah. It'll definitely get done.
Do black folks need to stop voting Democrat?
No, they do not, and because. The problem is that what is the viable alternative?
Exactly.
Do you is the other party the one as black people that you feel comfortable with, right? And I think that's a big part of it. You have to feel comfortable with that. And you know, I've read, you know, some conservative things that by, you know, some of the leading black conservatives, you know, Thomas Sowell, Armstrong Williams. And, you know, I've read some of the stuff, you know, some of their ideas on affirmative action and so on and so forth. And I see where they're coming from. I see their point. But would that make me want to be a Republican? There's nothing about the Republican Party that says to me as a black person that I want to be a member of the Republican Party. Do I have issues with the Democratic Party? Yeah. Big time. Yeah. You know, do I wish that we were like other countries that really had some type of viable third party? Yes.
Yeah. That's what I hear a lot. A lot from older black people who are older educated black people.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm really not happy with both, but I don't know if I could.
Yeah. Again, there's nothing that they have shown me that says to me, you have my best interests at heart. That's the thing, you know.
I tell you right now, these young black folks, they like, Trump gave us stimulus checks, which was probably more Congress, but he was in office during the stimulus.
He put his name on it.
Exactly. And then Trump talking about gas prices going down to $2 or less. It's looking kind of good for that younger black vote. What are the dangers of that? Like, you can.
I think Okay, so here is where my historian hat comes in. Let's talk when you start thinking about those kinds of things. What concretely is he going to do to make that happen? Again, we can make all of these promises. Give me a plan. And that side never does that. Yeah. Right? There's a lot of talk of what you're going to do. But let's go back and look at the historical record. Right? Of the things that were and also I wanna also say that I don't want to sit here and say that there probably weren't some policies or that kind of thing that were enacted by Trump or whatever, because I think that happens on all sides. I think what happens is you get one side. It is again because everything's gotten politicized and it's one side or the other. Now there's nothing that the other side has ever done that was good. There's nothing that they can do that's good. That kind of thing, right? But we know that they pass nonpartisan bills all the time. At some point they have to cooperate about something. So there is some good that they both have done, right? At some point or another, right? But that's where that third party comes in. Because then we're not choosing between the lesser of two evils.
Exactly. That's the same thing I'm hearing a lot of educated black folks say is the lesser of two evils. And for black people voting, as long as I've been conscious of what that's like, it's never been. Let's talk about Obama. It's never really been an enjoyable process.
The Democrats, and the interesting thing about this is that the Republicans are the reason behind this, right? But the Democrats take the black vote for granted. Because, again, as I was saying before, if, anybody with any common sense, would look at the Republican Party and be like, what are you really going, really? Nah.
I get it.
Right?
Yeah.
So you end up, and Democrats know this.
Yeah.
So they feel like in many ways they don't have to
They're
pander.
not going over there.
They feel like they don't have to pander. And what black people need to find a way to do is figure out what we can do to be able to hold them accountable.
Can you see that happening? I'm not gonna lie, I thought Ice Cube was on his way to getting something done on the last one. I'm like, this is gonna work. This guy is onto something.
I don't think that was ever something that was. I think that was pandering by. I think that was pandering by that side. I really do. I think that was a lot of pandering by that side, and
performative activism.
Yeah, and Ice Cube being one of my favorite MCs of all time. I'm a big Ice Cube fan, and somebody who I know has an education, right? Somebody I know who doesn't act on impulse, and somebody for the most part who has not taken the road. Has taken the road less traveled in many ways. The way he's conducted his business, right? He talks about this about major studios and so on and so forth, but he's can kind of continue to do his thing, self-made kind of guy, right? So I didn't see anything, and this goes back to what we were saying. I didn't see anything wrong with him going to see what the man had to say. I have no problem with you going to see what it is that the man has to say, and if it's something viable, bring it to the forefront and say, hey, let's see, what this is about. Let's see what's going on. I didn't have any problem with that because again, he's never come off to be as someone who acts on impulse like that or feels like he needs to pander, right? But I think by the other side, I think that was definitely a way to pander. They're trying to get any, famous African Americans that they can over to their side to try to endorse somebody that's popular, with popular culture, So he was, yes. So to me, that's what that was. They targeted him for that kind of thing, for his fame, for his influence, essentially, in the black community and that kind of thing. I really think that's what happened, but I never had a problem with him going over to see what the man was talking about. We should all see what the man is talking about. That don't mean we have to believe him. Right? Yeah. That doesn't mean we have to go with it. That doesn't mean we have to agree, but that goes back to this idea of having the hard conversations, right? Of talking, of getting over, your issues with his personality, although his personality has shown us who he is. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Yeah. It's really shown us, but at that time that Q went to have that conversation, it was a conversation that let's listen. Yeah.
You mentioned you got married in 2016.
Yes.
You don't really hear of people getting married at that age.
Yes.
How did you know you wanted to be married after being single for so many years?
Because I met my wife.
You just, when you know, you know.
Yeah, I have, good friends who have been married for a long time. My best friend, I shouldn't say my best friend because it's a bunch of us. It's 6 of us, 7 of us that have been tight since we were 11, 12 years old. We've all been in each other's weddings. Even some of us multiple times. We laugh at one of my boys because all of us have been best men at his weddings. And so we told my boy Monty, we said, next time it's your turn.
Oh my God.
I have to laugh about that all the time. But they've been married 20 years, 25 years, and so on and so forth. And I would ask them, man, how did you know? And they said, man, I just knew. Because, you date women and so on and so forth, and you think you feel a certain way, but you're not sure. And that's the thing, is if I have to go ask, then I don't know. Yeah. And I can't base how I feel off of how you felt or when you do. Right. But I knew after my wife and I, we actually were introduced by mutual friends who are now married. We actually ended up, they were together, they introduced us, and we got married before they did. Oh, wow. Right? And so they introduced us, and we started, I said no. So my friend is Heather. Her friend is David. And Heather was like, I call her HB because she was, last name was Brooks before she got married. She calls me DB. And she's like, DB, I got somebody I want you to meet. David has a friend. I was like, no.
Not big on blind dates.
No, well, I put it this way. I had just gotten out of a relationship, and I was like 41, 42. And the way I was feeling at that point, what I didn't want to happen was for me to start dating David's friend, and then something happened between the two of us, and then it affect your relationship with David.
That's smart.
I said I don't want to do that to you.
Definitely something to consider.
Right. So my wife actually hit me up on Facebook when I was paying attention to Facebook. Yeah, right. And she sent me a friend request, and I waited for a minute, and I accepted it, and then and so
like it.
Well, it was one of those things. Well, it was because once he sent me the friend request, it was like, oh, okay. Do I, I just got finished telling Heather this. Do I want to? But something compelled me to accept her friend request, and then one day, she saw me was online, and she sent me a message, and we started chatting, and we looked up. We were talking for 2 hours. Yeah. So we started doing that just on Facebook, and never forget, it was New Year's Eve 2013, I think, going into 2014. And I said, hey, we've been talking literally 4 months. And I said, hey, well, would you like to have my phone number? Maybe we can actually talk.
Yeah.
Right, so then we started talking, and then when we finally met, I was like, I knew from just after talking with her for so long, and once I got a chance to be in her presence, it didn't take me long to be like, okay, yeah, I know, yeah, now I understand.
And then, just no games at this age. I'm not trying to waste any time. I'm not, let's.
And that is exactly what she said to me.
How long was y'all together before you popped the question?
Like officially, like together, 9 months. Okay. But we had been talking 6 months prior to that, okay. Right? Before we actually, when we first met, spring break. So my wife had run for office in Minneapolis.
Like local politics.
Yeah, she ran for state representative.
Okay.
In Minneapolis, so she's still
very
huh?
Is that where she's
yes,
from?
Yes, she's from Minneapolis. She's actually born out here. My father-in-law was in the Air Force, but she grew up in Minneapolis. So she ran for state representative, and it was kind of right after her campaign. She said she hadn't been anywhere in a long time or whatever, and she said, "What are you doing for your spring break?" And I was like, "Nothing." And she's like, "Is there any place that you haven't been that you'd like to go?" And I was like, I've never been to San Diego. She's like, okay, well, let's go to San Diego. I was like, let's go to San Diego. So the first time we met in person was in the airport in Denver.
Wow.
And so we got to San Diego and we hung out. The first date we went to a museum about death devices. It was wow. Interesting. But what it showed me is that we had similar interests. We also, I'm also getting back to my sports fetish. One of the things that I got from my dad, and I said I ended up keeping up once my dad passed because of my boy Brian, was I travel to go to games.
Yeah,
I've been to a number of cities. I said I was going to do a little thick picture collage of all the cities I've been to in games, so basketball, baseball, football, all this kind of stuff. And my wife went to a football game with me.
Which one?
Right. We went to Qualcomm Stadium, right down in San Diego. We went to a Chargers Chiefs game, as a matter of fact. And it was she's not a sports fan at all. Yeah. But her thing was the experience. Yeah. She wanted to have the experience, and she enjoyed having the experience with me. Yeah. And so it's that kind of thing. We enjoy traveling. We enjoy the same things. Me and my wife and I, we have conversations. We have these intellectual conversations. We have spirited intellectual conversations. One of the first arguments that we ever got into was over a book that I was reading called Segregating Sound. Actually, excellent book about racism in music and stuff, and why we think country music is white people's music and the blues is black people's music. It deals with that, right? Now, we ended up having this discussion for 2 hours about this book. But she had never read the book.
Oh, wow.
But yet we're arguing. And it was finally like after an hour and a half, I was like, why am I arguing with you if you've never read the book? Right? That kind of thing. So we had those same interests. And literally it was, I just knew. I did. I really honestly knew after that. I said, yeah, I'm going to marry this woman. And I put it this way. This is the thing. This is what I tell people. Other women that I dated and that I was in long-term relationships with, I always thought to myself when I was thinking about getting to that point of marriage, I always said, okay, I could marry them. Okay, could you marry this person? Yeah, I could marry them. Yeah, I could marry that person. My wife, I wanted to marry her. There was no question. Now, I could. Because, you could, woulda, shoulda with a whole bunch of folks. But I wanted to marry her. So that's how I knew the difference.
Nice.
Yeah.
2021, December 2nd.
Ooh, you remember my daughter's birthday.
I'm a December baby. It's kind of my thing. I actually don't forget birthdays.
Really? Okay.
It's actually my thing, yeah.
Okay. Dope.
Fatherhood.
Man.
Now, where you're a seasoned individual and you can make that decision on a life partner real easy, I feel like the patience that you have for dealing with a baby and a toddler is diminished at that age. What is that like, pandemic? And
man, okay, so
because you're not changing diapers no more.
Oh yeah, she's just 2. Yeah, she is a potty trained. She isn't quite potty trained yet.
Oh, I see. Okay,
we're trying to get her there.
Okay, you're on the way out.
Yeah, okay. We want to get her there soon,
yeah.
Right? Because diapers expensive, and it's like you can change your own stink.
Exactly.
But I had gotten to the point, when my wife and I, when we got married, because my wife is like 6 years younger than me. I wanted to let her know that I wasn't just some old guy trying to have babies. Right? I was like, look, I could have had children a long time ago if it was just about having children. I didn't want children. I wanted a family. Yeah. It's a difference, right? And so I said, if that's a decision that, if you want to have children, that's great. If you don't, I understand. Look, I've been 40, I'm 40 years into it, that kind of thing, right? So Sadia wasn't planned. We wasn't, there wasn't no, hey, it's 12 o'clock. Go grab the vinegar and meet me.
Oh my God.
Go grab the vinegar. It's 12 o'clock. The sun is in the highest spot. Go boil the water and meet me in the bedroom. It wasn't that kind of thing. So, we didn't do those kinds of things. Even though people thought, when my mother-in-law told people that Tara was pregnant, they was like, oh, it's a miracle. It's like, no, it really wasn't. But she wasn't playing. My wife didn't even know she was pregnant until she was 11 weeks. Wow. That's how we really didn't know, right? So it wasn't something that was planned. I had gotten to the point that I didn't even think I was going to be a father. I told, and here's how God has a sense of humor, right? I told my wife, whenever you decide, I said, I'm ready for whatever you want. You make that decision, right? I said, but I would say that if we're going to do this, I would like to do this before my 50th birthday. Yeah. My daughter is born December 2nd. My birthday is January 13th. Wow. So God was like, oh, that's what you want, huh? Yeah. Wow. And it has been, it was one of those things where what we thought was, okay, I don't necessarily know if I, quote, want to have children, but I don't want to regret not having children.
Yeah, that's such a big thing that people...
But you know something, man? This is the best experience ever. And and I think, when I think to myself, saying that, it's like, how could you be so cavalier? Just, well, I don't want to regret not having them. How could you be have this cavalier attitude about this little person who you really don't want to even be away from, so another funny story. So one of my other best friends, my boy Johnny, his wife Kelly, they've been together for a long time. They've been married for 20 something years, but were together 4 or 5 years before that. But her dad, we call him Mr. J. I love her parents to death, Mr. and Mrs. J, right? So I remember I gave the best man speech at the wedding. And I made a joke, as I'm prone to do, about, telling Kelly, I'm so happy for you. I said, there's no one in this room that's happier for you than me. Because I knew Kelly even before my boy Johnny met her. Because when I was doing, started talking before we started this, when I was doing housing maintenance in college, in the dorm, that was the first year that she and her friends were in the dorm as freshmen. So I knew her before then, right? But I told her, I said, nobody is happier in here for you than me. I said, well, except for your dad. I said, because he got so much happy in him. He got enough happy in him for everybody in here. Because this man cried the entire wedding and the entire reception. He cried, right? But it was happy tears. He cried. And so when we got a chance to go back home summer 2022, got a chance to go back home, and my godson, Johnny and Kelly's son, was graduating from high school, right? So we got a chance. So Mr. and Mrs. J were there, so they got a chance to see the baby, right? And I told Mr. J, I said, Mr. J, you remember when I made fun of you at at the wedding reception when I gave the best man speech, and he started chuckling. He said, "Yeah," because again, when I tell you this is my buddy, this is my buddy. Mr. J comes to visit. He wants to know where's Dorian. He would come down to visit, and when I stopped eating meat, he cooked for everybody. He would still cook me something. He was like, "Go tell Dorian to come here." So he started laughing, and I said, "Now I understand."
Yeah.
I said, "I get it." I said, "I totally get it." All he did was reach over and give me a big hug, and then he started crying again. Yeah. But I did. I got it. I completely understood. Yeah. Once I saw her, oh man, I totally got it. So yeah, I'm wrapped around all these little fingers.
And it sounds like you got a cool work-life balance.
Yeah. Well, you learn to make one.
Okay, I like that.
You learn to make one. The one thing that the pandemic did, though, and all the remote work, it gave me the opportunity to watch her grow up for these first. She hasn't known anyone but me, my wife, my mom, and my sister-in-law, because we're the only ones out here, right? Mm-hmm. So what the pandemic enabled me to do was be at home with her every day. There never was a taking her to daycare, coming back to pick her up, that kind of thing when she turned 4 months or whatever, taking her to daycare and then dropping her off with somebody and then coming back and picking her up. Nope. Every day it was mommy and daddy. Yeah. And then eventually when my mother came, Grandy is my mother wants to be called, but it was us every single day. So I got to watch all those changes. Nobody got to hear her first words before me and my wife. Nobody got to see her first steps before me and my wife. All those kinds of things. So she has been the blessing that came out of that isolation of the pandemic, man. Because,
pandemic baby.
Oh my goodness, yeah, she's definitely a pandemic baby, and I could go on. Shoot, we could do this whole thing about me just talking about her.
I'm sure
for what she is, for what she's brought into my life. It's really one of the things I thought a lot of things that people said. You see people say on Facebook and online were really cliche. But yeah, man, she's my reason.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Oh man, getting up in the morning, just going in the room, and you turn on the lights for her to wake up, and she wakes up, and now she's starting to talk a little bit. She'll be like, "There you are, hi, Daddy." Yeah. And it's like, man, there's no better feeling, none.
Hell yeah.
So Skip ever not doing it because I regret it. I'm so glad that I did it. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So grateful.
I got some thought-provoking questions for you.
Okay, let's go.
All right. Here we go.
It's not loading.
Okay, I know what to do now.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to inquire about the role of hip hop in academia and how you see it evolving in the future.
I've always, because history is happening all the time, but because of the fact that hip hop is a reflection of the black experience, I think that hip hop will become more of a research tool, a source. These songs can let you know about what was going on during particular periods of time.
Is that your first line of defense when you have to defend hip hop? The reflection piece and
no, actually, my first defense is entertainment.
Okay.
Quit taking everything so seriously.
Yeah.
It's entertainment.
Scorsese can make his violent movies. We should be able to
Yes. Why is it? Why is it that? And at the same time, though, hip hop is a victim of this too. A victim of itself. You know, it's victimized itself. The keeping it real thing, right? But yes, I've always said that. Why is it that, you know, nobody labels Martin Scorsese as a gangster director, but watch every movie he's ever made, right? But yet, you know, Ice Cube or whatever is a gangster rapper, or Snoop is a gangster rapper, or, you know, that kind of thing. I think people forget the entertainment value of it, you know, and because that's what it was always meant for. And I think one of the things that happened that people stopped paying attention to, right, is if you think about all these guys that now, you know, get in talk on podcasts or whatever, you know, the old school cats talk about how they stopped doing what it was they were doing in order to rap. Now guys feel like you got to keep doing that in order to be able to rap, right? So the whole keeping it real ethos really kind of turned itself on hip hop, because now, where at first the idea of keeping it real was, okay, well, we're just telling you like it is. I may not be involved in this, but I've seen it. I've seen stuff on the street happen. I have family who may be involved in this. I'm just telling you what it's like where I'm from. I'm keeping it real. Now it became, well, you didn't do it, so you can't talk about it. So now, in order to be able to talk about it, now I got to go do it.
Exactly.
Which, you know, and then I got to keep doing it. None of these guys ever evolve. They want to stay thugs or whatever. But the guys from back in the day, you all see them, they've all evolved. Dre evolved. Jay-Z evolved. 50 Cent evolved. All of those guys evolved and they developed or whatever. But now what's happened with the younger generation, they all want to stay in this thug life. They all want to stay doing these kinds of things. And it's like, no, at a certain point, you know, growth and development.
Yeah.
You know, you really need to get some of that in your life.
Yeah.
You know.
Talked about that. I'd like to inquire about your passion for Black liberation and how it intersects with your academic and personal pursuits.
Man.
I learned a lot from that course.
Thank you.
And if I could sum it up in kind of two phrases, one, Black liberation, and two, consciousness. And you talk about, you mentioned earlier your passion. I hope people can see the passion, and that's what you want out of an instructor. Even it doesn't matter what the course is. I want somebody who's passionate about what they're talking about. So how does that kind of connect with your academic and personal pursuits?
I was always taught that the road to liberation first started with oneself. And in educating yourself, right? And so it gave me my love for reading, right? It also being around because of my mother. It helped me to understand how, which is why hip hop and cultural arts is a big passion of mine as well, and understanding how those things too, how the cultural arts, music and dance and so on and so forth, how they're also part of Black liberation. So for me, I don't consider, like I said before, I don't consider myself a politician. I don't necessarily consider myself an activist, being the person that's going to be out there with the megaphone, you know, doing that. I'm the person that writes the speech. I'm the person that helps organize and that kind of thing. And that's what I see myself doing in many ways when I, you know, stand up to teach. What I feel like I'm doing is, I feel like that all my students, and since we're talking about Black liberation, my Black students in college, you have the tools. My job is to help you learn how to use those tools and to help you sharpen those tools. And for me, that's kind of my contribution to that. I want you to take this, and this is why I always say to this in class, is I never want students to walk out of the class regurgitating what I say. Don't go somewhere and say, well, Professor Brown said this, well, Professor Brown said that. You walk out of my class and you say, oh, I read that. Oh, well, I read such and such. Oh, I read someone. I read this person. I read that person. Because my job is to give you the tools to be able to form your own opinions, to be able to learn what your passion is, to or even more, staying with the question, to learn what role you can play in Black liberation, right? I found, my role, right, as far as teaching and that kind of thing is concerned. But I'm here to give you the ability to find your role in this as well, because I think it's all part of that. I think hip hop used to be a big part of that. I think it's lost a lot of that. So I think it's all, at a certain point, it can all be used as a tool for Black liberation. Like I said, that's what I see my scholarship is doing. I like telling people about the people that they don't necessarily know about, right? It's important to know the Martin Luther Kings and the Malcolm X's, right, and the Rosa Parks, right? But you also need to know the Erica Hugginses. You also need to know the Septima Clarks, and you need to know the Bayard Rustins, and you need to know those people too, the Amzie Moores. Those people are important as well, because what it shows is that they all had a part to play. Yeah. Martin Luther King was great, but what made Martin Luther King was the 4,000 people that were on that march, whose names you probably don't know, right? And so my job is to show you that you can be a part of that too, that every role in that is important. The role that you play is not a small role, right? You just have to figure out what that role is, right? And that's what I feel like I'm doing with education. That's what I feel like I'm hopefully at some point, imparting upon my Black students, really giving them the tools to be able to find their places.
Last question is,
Okay.
do you think we will ever see a resurgence of conscious rap? Niggas ain't
Yes.
gonna hear that shit? Or
Yes, I do, because I think things are cyclical.
okay.
I think that one of the things that is actually very helpful, or has been very helpful to hip hop, has been this kind of, in a way, decolonization of hip hop. And this is what I mean by that, is that no longer do you have to go through a major label for people to get your music heard, right? So you get people on these independent platforms and so on and so forth who can do things and who can reach people with their music that after the mid 90s until probably 2010, 2015, that the record companies were able to really kind of keep that voice out, right? You had a few people that came through, your J. Cole's and so on and so forth. Even though sometimes I kind of take a little bit of umbrage sometimes with what he says about certain things. But I overall, don't get me wrong, I love J. Cole. I think I love the way he can. Oh my God, he can rhyme. So I do love J. Cole. But I think sometimes but I don't necessarily know if he's ever referred to himself as a conscious rapper or whatever, that kind of thing. But I think that there has to be a modicum of respect for everyone, including women, and so on and so forth. I think J. Cole loses that sometimes. But anyway, besides that, I do love J. Cole. Let me say that. But I think things are cyclical. I think it's much easier for conscious rappers to get their stuff out there. What has to happen is hip hop has to go back to ideas of originality. So my theory, and maybe I'm probably basing this off of, I know I'm basing this off a lot of stuff that I read, so somebody might try to say, I stole their theory or whatever. But what I saw really was, for me, was after NWA became famous without really getting radio play, right? And that a lot of people that came after them were copycats. They copied a lot of what NWA was doing, right? And so what has happened with because the industry and record companies, as they were swallowing up the smaller record companies, right, in the 90s, everything became a copycat of, okay, well, here, this group is popular, you sound like them. This person is popular, oh, this song is popular, oh, make a song that sounds like this. So then what happened is that everything started sounding the same. Yeah. Right? So I think once, and what people don't realize really is that the most popular songs generally are the ones that are the most original, right? Once you get back to that originality, once people see that they can be original, that they don't have to go with the trends, that they don't have to be, the next 21 Savage, that they don't have to be this next person who's coming out with this same persona and so on and so forth. I think then, and I don't know how long it'll take, I think then it'll get back to consciousness. Either that, or there's going to have to be something real catastrophic.
You don't think we had that yet as a community?
I think,
because the people have to receive that consciousness and listen to it and get those streams up. I listen to battle rap a lot, and I'm honestly spoiled. Rap, you are like the Charlie Clips, the Loaded Luck. I'm spoiled when I hear songs on the radio, lyrics. People are losing their minds over that bar, and I'm like, that's light, that's little. You know what I'm saying? So, and a lot of shit they talking about is like, man, the wordplay on this and is low key conscious. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't gotta be boring.
Right.
You feel me? Like, just
put
it over a nice beat. I think that's where Nas kind of Nas' production was buns to me. I never really liked it, but what he's saying, like, this is a good song. Don't you get a good producer and
Once you got so many albums, deep or whatever in the Nas, it definitely was okay. I'm really listening to this for the lyrics.
Sure.
Not.
You gotta be a Nas fan.
Yeah, you go to Nas, definitely a Nas fan. But I think that, getting back to your question. Yes, I do think that we've had some catastrophic things happen, but the catastrophic thing, but the problem is this though, is that this is what I see happen a lot that I find problematic, is that whenever something happens here, we read a report about this thing, and then people start talking about this thing. And then they'll say, oh, well, what about this? And well, what about this? And well, what about this? And so kind of what happens is I think this generation is starting to become a little desensitized to that kind of stuff. Right? So that's what I mean about something being catastrophic. Because what it's going to have to do is, it's got to be something that is really going to affect everybody that hip hop touches. It's got to affect the conscious rappers. It's got to affect the thugs. It's got to affect the materialism. It's got to affect all of those kinds of things for all of these guys to get together. Because again, they all in many ways have their own platforms, right? Because, as I said, because of the internet. So it's going to have to be something catastrophic where they're all going to have to get together and be like, man, we got to do. I mean, even though you had people like was it after the insurrection on January the 6th, or when the Baby came out with that one song, or was it after George Floyd? It was a real conscious song, which showed me that he could do it, right? I cannot think of the name of the song, but so you were starting to kind of have those kinds of things, maybe a little kind of start to happen, but it's going to have to be something that is going to have to turn more than just that one person into making something conscious. It's going to really have to, and unfortunately, it's going to have to be something catastrophic. It's going to have to be something where these guys who are making all of this money are willing to forsake all of that money.
Yeah, I think that's what
to come out and talk about it. That's why I say I think it's going to have to be something, unfortunately, catastrophic.
Who you got in the Super Bowl? Unbiased.
Okay. Let me tell you what I've learned not to do. It's bet against Mahomes.
Oh, wow.
Every time, and this is not the homer answer in terms of me going to a lot of the Kansas City Chiefs games, right? This is literally watching this dude play.
Something special.
And you cannot count him out of a game.
I know.
You have to. The way that San Francisco wins this game is they have to blow Kansas City out. If you give this dude a chance, he's going to take advantage of that opportunity.
2020, leap year. Trump versus Biden in the election. Niners versus Chiefs. Niners versus Chiefs in the Super Bowl. The very next leap year, 2024. Trump versus Biden in the election. Niners Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I think it's going the other way this year.
What, the election or the Super Bowl? Or the Super Bowl?
Shit, both.
Let's hope not.
Dorian Brown, I appreciate you. Appreciate you agreeing to do this again. I used to sweep up hair in a barbershop. It was my first job when I was 12 years old. And my barber, who still cuts my hair to this day, he told me, listen to more black men talk. You're going to see what it was like for them growing up. You're going to get, like you said, with hip-hop, you're going to get an idea of what it was like for them. They're going to impart knowledge, and you're going to be in their shoes one day. And I listened to that. You and I would have discussions after class. And every discussion was an enriching conversation on top of the class material. It's an honor to have you on the pod.
Man,
thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for thinking I was interesting enough to come talk to for, a couple of hours, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciated you in class. When you come to class, oftentimes it's a great thing when you have students who keep you on your toes, who are going to ask you some questions and going to ask you some thought-provoking questions, some probing questions. So, you were one of those people that kept me on my toes. So I appreciate you.
Hopefully the questions tonight were good too.
Oh, they're great. I hope I did a good job of answering. Yeah. I hope your audience, isn't sitting there talking about listening to this babbling fool.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to expand my audience too. You know what I'm saying? I can't just really focus on the 16 to 25 demographics. I gotta show some love to the OGs. So.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I can't believe I've become now the OG. That is so interesting.
I'm getting there. I got the gray in the beard. I'm still in my early 30s. Somebody called me old stuff at the gym the other day. I was like, I'm finna give y'all buckets. Hold on, I'm finna give y'all buckets. Somebody said, who got old stuff? What? I'm embracing it though. I'm taking it all in stride. It's nice. I'm getting my flowers from my former students.
Yes. That's always a great thing.
Cyclical, you know what I'm saying? I'm in a good spot. I'm just trying to have as much fun with it as possible. So I think you and I need a part 2. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully before the PhD is finished, we can get it in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can figure out something.
Hell yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Oh, brother.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was an honor for me, man. Thank you for, again, like I said, thinking that I was interesting enough that other people want to hear what I have to say. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right.
people can find you on LinkedIn if they have any questions. Like
Man, that's about the only place. Is probably LinkedIn. Actually, interestingly enough, probably the best place to get in touch with me because we check the stuff all the time is on our podcast.
YouTube.
Yeah, so on YouTube, it's BIOTB. Blame it on the boogie.
Yeah.
It says BIOTB podcast.
Yeah.
And so we've got like a website for it, and so that's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me or whatever would be through there.
Hell yeah. All right, folks. Next Wave fam, keep surfing.